Today I want to do a review of the Loop Engage earplugs. So if you can see this little Loop earplugs, they come in this really cute case. I love the packaging. The box that it comes in is adorable. The little keychain container that it comes in is also adorable. It has a little loop. You can stick it on the way that I put it in my purse. I'll show you in the pictures, but it's having a hard time focusing on it on the camera, but it's very cute container, easy, portable. They have adjustable sizes. The ones that they come preloaded with didn't fit my ears because I have pretty small ears. So I had to put in the smaller size of this attachable part that makes it fit into the ear canal. And as you can probably see, hopefully you can see, it disappears almost entirely. So when it's in my ear, it's almost imperceptible. The color blends right with my skin. See if you can see that. So when it's in my ears, you can almost not tell at all. You can see a little bit of something plastic. So if you're really inspecting hard, you might think it's maybe like a hearing aid. I did have one occurrence over the past week that I was working with or wearing these, where I do think that one of the baristas at a coffee shop that I went to thought that I had hearing aids in, because it does sort of look like a hearing aid since it's flesh colored. I actually didn't mind that response. I kind of appreciated it because I noticed that when she noticed these, she began articulating more clearly and enunciating her words and really kind of overemphasizing her lip movement so that I could read lips better. And because I have some auditory processing issues, I actually really appreciated that. And I thought it helped me to catch what she was saying. She slowed down a little bit and spoke a little bit slower. Um, and since I don't really mind if someone would think that I'm hearing impaired or wearing hearing aids, I didn't mind that at all. But if that would be something that would bother you, I did want to note that it kind of does look like a hearing aid, perhaps if someone were to see it. But there's all different colors. So I got the ones that I felt like would blend the best with my skin tone, but there's green and blue and bright red. I almost got this color that I'm wearing because I wear a lot of burgundy, and I thought it might be kind of like a accessory. So you could play with that if you wanted them to be seen, and then they're much less likely to be confused with perhaps a hearing aid or a hearing device. So I wanted to give my honest opinion on these Loops Engage. In the comments, when I mentioned that I was going to work with these and review them, all of the comments that I got and the feedback was really positive of people who use these on a daily basis. So I do want to say that for a large majority of people, these work really, really well. For certain sensory issues that I personally have, there were aspects of them that did not work. And so I want to highlight what those are in case you have similar sensory issues. You might want to know this ahead of time before you purchase these. For the pros, the list of things that I really appreciated about the Loop Engage, and I'm going to pull these out so I can hear if I'm speaking too loudly, or not to the camera, but the things that I really appreciated about these were it did dull the ambient noise. One really positive benefit that my husband noted is that I had better volume modulation. I have a really hard time hearing if I'm speaking too loudly or too quietly. That's one of those interoceptive abilities that I don't do well. And so I can't always tell if I'm speaking too loud or if I'm speaking too quietly for someone to hear me. And so with these in, I was able to modulate my volume better and hear my internal sounds, which helped me control my volume. So that was a big benefit of having these in. Another benefit of having these in was the muting of the ambient sound. So when I wanted to really focus and was in a non-chaotic environment like I am right now at my work at the office, there are some just ambient sounds that happen outside, like fire trucks occasionally will pass, or our office building is in a medical complex right across from a hospital. So we do get a lot of sirens passing through since the ambulances come to that hospital across the street. So it does block those sounds really well and allow me to focus and really pay attention to what I'm trying to pay attention to. I did also find that I could hear, because this is in the Engage version, it's supposed to dampen ambient sound, but allow you to hear your conversations with someone who's right near you. And I did find that that worked well. I was able to hear the people in the car with me or that I was speaking to in a room, but while still dulling the ambient sounds around me, like air conditioning and things like that. So those were big bonuses, in my opinion, of these earplugs. Now, to go into the sensory issues that I personally have, the sensitivities that I feel like these don't work for, is that when I put these in and it dulls the sounds around me, what happens is that my internal sounds are magnified. So if you have any anxiety around hearing your heartbeat or hearing your breath, or if that's distracting to you, or your mouth sounds, or eating sounds, which all of those really bother me. So that was something that I could not have these in for. I noticed what I really wanted them for was to wear to restaurants, because I get very overstimulated at restaurants, particularly if there's crowds and a lot of noise. And I was hoping that these would be a really good solution to wear to restaurants where I could still hear the people at my table and talk with them, but not hear the conversations of everyone around me. And I found that that was not the case. These were not a good option for me to use at a restaurant, because when eating was involved, my internal sounds were highly distracting, and I find eating sounds disgusting. So I couldn't really focus on what the people at my table were saying, because I was so aware of my chewing sounds and my internal like gurgles of hunger and things like that were just absolutely amplified with these in. If that is not an issue for you, if you don't have that sensory issue, if chewing sounds don't bother you, if you don't notice things or there's no anxiety around things like your heartbeat or the breath, then these would be a great option for you, because I was able to hear the conversations of the people at my table while muting the ambient sound around me. And I found this particularly helpful at one point when I had gone into that coffee shop where I think that the barista thought that perhaps I was hearing impaired. It was a really quiet environment in there, I think. I didn't take these out while I was in there, but it seemed pretty chill and calm. But they were closing. And the reason I was going there was because my husband was getting his haircut at the Tom's Haircut for Men next door, because that's mostly men. I was just going to sit and have my coffee while he got his haircut, but the coffee shop was closing. So I ended up going over to the place where he was getting his haircut to wait for him to finish getting his haircut. And I didn't even realize, because I had these in, how loud that environment was, and how, I mean, combining the music that was blaring there with the sounds of like hair dryers and all of the things that they, and the washing station and all of that. I had these in and I was reading a book, but I was eating my little like protein bar that I had gotten from the coffee shop next door. So I decided to take one out so that my internal sounds of eating wouldn't be so frustrating. So I pulled one out and was absolutely overwhelmed with how incredibly loud it was in that specific environment. So I can attest to the fact that this blocked probably, I don't know, 85, 90% of that sound. I was entirely unaware that I was in such a loud environment until I pulled them out. And then I was very like extra sensitive to it, because I had gone from a very quiet environment into this very loud one. So these do block a lot of sound. I will say I found that um, the sounds of the car when we were traveling in the car were muted. That was really helpful. I would say at home, I wouldn't use these with my kids. That was another thing that I was hoping might work for this, is to like kind of dull the sounds around the house, because I've got teenagers, so there's outbursts all the time that make me jump around my house when they just, get on a TikTok or something and they're skipping every 15 minutes, a new video is coming on. That's absolutely distracting me when I'm trying to cook or do anything at the house. So I thought this will block that ambient noise and I'll be able to engage better with my kids. I found that I had a hard time hearing them unless they were directly by me. So maybe within 6 feet or so. If they were within that, I could hear their conversation and I didn't hear all the sounds like happening upstairs and that kind of thing. But if they were out of that range, I didn't know they were talking to me, and that wasn't necessarily helpful. Another reason that I got these that I thought would be helpful was because I was diagnosed, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, with auditory processing disorder. I thought I had hearing loss. And I thought I had hearing loss because my ex-husband was a musician. So I was around bands, percussion, drums often. And I realized that I wasn't catching a lot of what the kids were saying. And I was having to ask people to repeat themselves often. I was needing to put the closed captioning on when I would watch a movie, because I just couldn't keep up with what they were saying on there. And it wasn't that my mind couldn't move fast enough with the plot, it was that I was not catching what they were saying until much later. And so that closed captioning really helped me be able to kind of keep up with what was going on. But I thought that was hearing loss. And then I went through a bunch of tests that showed it was actually auditory processing disorder, so delay in between hearing something and comprehending what you just heard. And at the same time, I was also dealing with the inability to pick out the important sounds in a room. So when they did a hearing test where I was in like kind of a chamber and all there was sound piped into my ear, I passed with flying colors and could hear everything. So there wasn't any hearing loss. But when I was taken outside of that chamber and they did the same experiment, I couldn't hear the sounds when there were other sounds in my environment. And that's what I find to be the biggest issue or need for some auditory sensory regulation for myself. And I didn't find that these met that need. So I guess in conclusion, I think that these would work really well for someone if they were in a loud, chaotic environment and needed that buffered and they're not bothered by internal sound. So if you work on a construction site or in a salon or something that's a really loud environment, these may be a really good option for you. If you're at all sensitive to your own internal sounds, these may not be. Also, to note, these are the Engage version. They have several other levels of volume control, and one of those I might find more beneficial than this specific one for me and for what I was looking for. I think there's one for really loud environments like concerts, and then there's one that maybe is a little bit less volume controls these, if I'm remembering correctly, and then there's a model that does where you can adjust it. And I think if I were going to try these again, I would get the model where you can adjust it, because that seems like it would be more applicable to different situations, and I might find one that would work for that restaurant environment. As of right now, the best tool that I have for this really truly is still just my Apple AirPods. So I have, let's see, my little case here. My Apple AirPods, they also mute ambient noise and sound, and there's an ambient setting. So I can have these in, I can listen to obviously any media or any Bluetooth music or input, but they also have this setting, if you squeeze them, that cancels out any of the ambient noise around you. I find these do that better. And at the same time, I don't hear my internal sounds because I have the ability to pipe in white noise. So I may be able to work with like pink noise or brown noise or white noise, which masks my own internal sounds, but I don't hear the ambient sounds around me. They are less helpful for being able to engage in the conversations with people around me. So I notice that as soon as I have these in, people assume I'm ignoring them. They're not very helpful for creating an engaging conversation where people believe that you're paying attention and catching and hearing everything that they're saying. So for conversations, I don't find that these are the best solution. But for everything else, for just overstimulating spaces or work mode or things like that, I can pop on some pink noise or some brown noise or white noise, put these in. I also really, really, from a sensory perspective, love 8D audio. It just feels all encompassing, like I'm swirling in music, which I love. And these are useful for all of that. That's one drawback of the loop, is that you really can't Bluetooth this with your media. So if you have these in, you can't listen to things on your phone or anything like that. Whereas with these, you can. So still for the win, I pick my AirPods over the loops more consistently. But I am really glad that I gave them a try. I think for the price point, they're great. And if you can get them to work for you, I think these were like 30 bucks and these are, almost 200. So for the price point, these do a great job. They really do mask a lot of sound. And I love the fact that they keep a low profile. I can pop them in and nobody is aware really that I have them in. So it doesn't create a barrier between conversations or interactions. And I think as long as you are not sensitive to your own internal sounds, these are a really good option for you. So that is my review after using these for about a week, little over a week. And I hope it's helpful if you're looking at perhaps purchasing them.